I'm going to start by talking about SCORE real quickly. First, right here at the beginning, I do have one of our very own at the Boston chapter, Mike Sandman, and he will be giving our presentation today. So I want to talk first on the offerings that SCORE has. We do training, which you're here today. I do encourage you to please check out the newsletter or the website. We have a lot of great programs this year. Many of them are new or first-time subjects for us, so we're very excited about being able to present those. The most important thing that SCORE does is the mentoring. Our mentors are volunteers who have a wide variety of experience and knowledge that they want to share with you. Who do we work with? We work with folks that are, I kind of think I might want to start a business and I want to find out more. We work with folks that are in the process of starting that business, and we work with those that are already in business and they're looking for ways to grow their business, or maybe they have some issues with marketing or maybe some financial questions. So we work with everyone. You do not have to have a business license already up front to come see us. A beginning session is an introduction between you and the mentor. They want to learn about you, find out what your goals and plans are, and help you achieve those goals and plans. So they will come up with a plan for you. I'm often asked, can I work with more than one mentor? And yes, that does sometimes happen. As you progress down the path, your needs might change. And so other mentors can be brought in to work with you and fill in any blanks that might be missing. I do encourage you to go to the chapter websites there. You will be able to find a mentor, register for a mentor there. You'll be able to find a listing of all the workshops, and you will also find a great library section that has a lot of templates and tools for you to use. I'll put those websites into the chat here in a moment. We do anticipate a decent crowd today. I very strongly would like to encourage you, if you have a question for our presenter, use the Q&A tab. It just allows us to not lose track of those questions because the chat keeps rolling. You can use chat for anything else, but if you want a question asked to the presenter, use the Q&A tab. And that's all I have on SCORE. I want to go ahead and introduce our presenter today, Mike Sandman.
Okay, thanks, Teresa. So welcome to Building a Startup Budget. You don't need to be a startup in order to get some benefit out of this, I think, but certainly if you are thinking about starting up a business, or you're just at the beginning stages of it, this is hopefully going to be very helpful to you. So I want to start with some definitions, because sometimes people confuse revenue with profit, and sales with with profit and so forth. But revenue or sales is what customers or clients pay. It's the money that comes in over the counter or through internet receipts or anything of that sort, checks, whatever. It's money coming into the business, the total amount of money coming into the business before any expenses. And so net revenue or sales is left after returns or allowances. So Amazon sends you something, you don't like it, you send it back. They had gross revenue that included the amount that you paid for it. Their net revenue is the gross revenue minus whatever they refunded to you for the product that you sent back. And a lot of businesses, especially if you have a physical product, will have some returns or allowances. Expenses or costs are what you pay to run the business. So there are different categories of expenses or costs, and it's important to remember that, and we're going to look at each one of those categories. The first one is startup costs. What does it take to get into business? Do you need equipment? Do you need a build out if you have a retail establishment, counters and display space and so forth? Do you need any legal help? You need a website to set up. All of those things are startup costs. They're typically one-time costs. You may have to pay some additional costs in the future as you expand or as you improve something, and certainly people are always improving their websites. But startup costs, generally speaking, are one time, and we'll look at how to calculate those startup costs because they're very important. Very often we tend to think about the ongoing cost of the business without remembering the startups. Fixed expenses are things like rent, web hosting, insurance, phone. They're called fixed because they continue whether revenue goes up or down. You open the doors or you go into business on the internet or whatever, those expenses continue before the first dollar comes in, and they continue even, unfortunately, if no dollars come in during a period when things are slow. Variable expenses are labor, including your labor. It's very important to remember you have a cost. After all, you want to get paid, just like your employees do. Parts and supplies, inventory, and it's called variable because they go up and down depending on revenue. And usually variable expenses are a fairly constant percentage of revenue once you get the business going. Profit is what's left over after all the expenses are paid. So revenue minus expenses or sales minus costs equals profit. Again, it's not the beginning number, it's the ending number. And that's the number that goes on your profit and loss statement at the very bottom and ultimately will flow over typically into your tax return. Okay. All right. So why bother with this? We're going to go through the pain of building a startup budget or a startup projection. Well, first of all, you have to figure out whether the business will enable you to reach your personal income goals. There's really, if you want to earn $50, $100, $200,000, whatever your number is in a year, after all expenses are paid, by the way, you have to figure out whether the business is likely to enable you to get to that point. And if it's not, you have to think about, well, how can I turn it into that? Or maybe I shouldn't do this at all. Very early on when I was just starting as a mentor for SCORE, I had a client come in and he was interested in buying a dry cleaning establishment. We went through the numbers and showed that the dry cleaning establishment would yield about $35,000 after all expenses. And he said, "Is that all?" He was expecting that he would be able to take home all the money that came in over the counter. He said, "I shouldn't do that." Well, that's right. So you have to figure out whether the business will enable you to reach your goals. If it all works out, you have to figure out how much money you'll need to start up or expand. Remember, I talked about startup costs, and get an understanding of what the risks and rewards are going to be. It identifies development startup costs and ongoing expenses. It helps you explain to somebody who's giving you the money to start, whether it's a family member, nonprofit lender, or a bank, the information that they need. A lender will typically give you money to start a business or expand a business if they're pretty confident that they're going to get it back. It's not a gift, it's a loan. And so you want to be able to give them information that gives them confidence that, in fact, they will get this back. And finally, it provides you with a plan to help guide your decisions and monitor the results. You can look month by month and see, well, what did I think I was going to do? And then you can modify the plan as you go along so that it keeps up to date. It rolls forward. So it's a really good idea to go through this. I'm going to work through a set of spreadsheets, and then we'll actually make the master spreadsheet available to you, and we'll make the PDF of this presentation available to you as well. And of course, there'll be a recording on the SCORE website. And if any of you have questions afterwards, you're welcome to get back in touch with me. I think my email address is up on here somewhere. Let me just go back and have a look. Oh, it's not. Okay, well, I'll put it on here right now. And we won't do that in caps, okay? But we'll just leave it there for now. But it'll be on the PDF when you get it. Okay. I'm going to work through this financial projections template. The spreadsheets are going to look a little complicated. You're going to say, I don't think I can do this on my own. I don't understand all the figures and the math. It's really overwhelming. You really can do this. And if you run into difficulty, we have the Boston chapter has something like 80 or 85 SCORE mentors who can help you. Each of the other chapters in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, and for that matter, all across the country have help. And as Teresa mentioned, sometimes you work with 2, even 3, 4, sometimes mentors who have different sets of skills. So I'm working with a client right now on something. She needs help with social media marketing advice, and then I can't give. I got a hold of one of the other SCORE mentors who has real expertise in this, and she's going to come into the picture, and we'll work together with the client. You can get help. We are happy to bring the extra help in. So whether it's financial or marketing or whatever it is that you need, there's almost certainly somebody who can help you out. So as you look at this, and you think about, well, what are my costs going to be, or how much is the ongoing cost of running this operation, or how, how will I do my marketing? Do I need print advertising? Do I need, web advertising? What is it that I'm going to do? All of those questions can be answered with just a bit of help from us, and that's what we're here for. So I'm going to use an example of a tree nursery that produces specimen trees, shrubs, and vines. Projected third year sales, as we'll get to, is $1,710,000. So reasonable size business, and it sells both to florists and to consumers. And those are 2 different tiers, and where it complicates the spreadsheet a little bit, but it will also show you how to separate out the segments of your market if you're trying to figure out what the charge and what the profit is from each one of those segments. And for that matter, what the expenses are for each one of those segments. The worksheets are the required startup funds, how much you need to start, what the salaries and wages are going to be, what your fixed operating expenses are, the projected sales forecast, and a second sheet on that, and then cash receipts and disbursements, so we can figure out cash flow, which will help you determine how much money you need in the bank once you open the doors and start work after your startup has startup expenses up. And the templates will work in Microsoft Excel, in Google Sheets, in Apple Numbers. You shouldn't have any difficulty no matter which application you use. Okay, let's talk about startup funds for a plant nursery. So in some ways, I should really show you a blank here. And if we were doing this in person, I might do that and say, well, what do you think the startup costs are anyway? So one thing is, if you're going to grow plants, you need a place to grow them. And it's not a place in the city. It's probably a place in the countryside somewhere. And so that affects the cost of land. So we put some numbers in here to project what Anne is going to need for startup, and one of them is land and a building in which to keep the equipment and so forth. So we put in $100,000 there and $30,000 for the building, probably sort of an overgrown shed as a practical matter is all she's going to need. She's going to have to do some improvements in that building. Those are, and if she's leasing the building as opposed to buying it, that they would be called leasehold improvements. If not, they're improvements that are not real estate related, and we'll get back to why it's important to separate those out from the land and the buildings. There are some equipment costs, furniture and fixtures. There's an office, and you need to have a chair and a place to sit, and a computer, vehicle, delivery vehicle, and any other expenses that come along. So we've added this up, and it's an Excel spreadsheet, so it calculates out that we've got $172,000 of fixed assets that we need to pay for in order to get into business. And then there's some other money that we need, because those assets just stay there. They keep working for us. But there's some other money that's in there that we need to spend, and that money will get spent as we move along. It's not going to be sitting there and something that we can point at. We can point at the fixed assets a year from now and say, here, that's what I bought. So first of all, we may have some pre-opening salaries and wages. We haven't put a number in here for this, but there are a lot of situations where if you're opening an establishment, you pay somebody to help you get ready, and that would be the pre-opening salaries and wages. Prepaid insurance premiums, we need to have some insurance just to get going. Inventory, legal and accounting fees, rent deposits, you can see all of the categories there. And we've come up with a total of $41,800. So adding those two numbers together, the amount that we have to put into fixed assets and the operating capital, $213,800. If you're opening a business that doesn't have a place of business, it's an internet business, for example, or you're running it out of your home, the top side there isn't anywhere nearly as large. There'll be equipment, there's a computer, a printer, a fax machine, if you still use such things, maybe a vehicle, but you're not going to have land and buildings. You may have some build out, some modifications in order to create an office, but it's a much smaller number typically. In fact, it's conceivable that it might even be zero, but there will be some startup costs just the same. For example, for an internet business, a website has to be designed, and you need, for an e-commerce website, you're probably talking several $1,000s to get it off the ground. And you have to incorporate, and you don't have to pay a lot of money in legal and accounting fees, but there'll be something for that. And if you're selling a product over the internet, even though you don't have the cost of a storefront, you will have some inventory costs, potentially at least some inventory costs, unless you're really just doing fulfillment. Okay, so $213,800 in startup funds. Very important question is, so how much do you need? What it's going to be used for? You have to think about all of the things that might be in there. A very important question next is, what's the labor involved here? So we've put in, once the business gets going, after the startup, the number of employees. Well, there's one owner, that's Ann. She's going to pay herself $25 an hour, at least at the start. She's hopefully going to have some profit at the end that she'll be able to either take out or reinvest in the business. But to take out as additional salary. And well, she's going to pay herself for 40 hours a week. My guess is that she's going to work a lot more than that. And so will you if you're starting up a full-time business. But okay, she'll put that in at 40 hours. She's expecting to have 3 full-time employees, pay them $17.50, and they're going to work 40 hours. And so she's got salary expenses of $13,433. And this number here, the 4250, that doesn't belong there. That's not a real number. It's just the total of these two, but it's not used in the calculation. So $13,433, but there are expenses beyond that for labor. So she has to pay Social Security, 6.2%, Medicare, federal and state unemployment taxes, depending on the state. She may have an employee pension program or a contribution to a 401k or something of that sort. She may have workman's comp insurance, employee health insurance. We'll leave those aside. She's only got 4 people at this point, so she doesn't need to provide employee health insurance at this point. But even so, there's another $1,510 a month of payroll taxes and expenses. So that's fairly typical. In fact, that's, you normally figure about 15% to maybe 20% of additional costs beyond just the basic salary and wages that you're paying to people. So that spreadsheet will help you do that without forgetting to put those categories in. And here are her operating expenses. So this is going to go on month after month. So these are the um, the fixed and variable expenses that she's going to have. Advertising, has to keep that van, that delivery van on the road, $800 a month for gas and maintenance and whatever else. She's not paying any commissions and fees, but it's a category that you might have, so it's on the spreadsheet. Um, Contract labor, she doesn't have that. It's not included in payroll. She might have some students who come in after school or something like that in a busy season to help her out, in which case that would go into June or July's payroll. This is for January. Um, Insurance other than health insurance, legal and professional services. Again, you can see the categories. And we think we've got most of these, but if you recognize that you have some additional ones, some additional categories, given the nature of your business, be sure and put those in. So her total expenses for these categories are $4,300 for the month of January, just to get off the ground. And of course, a tree nursery that's just starting up, as we'll see, is going to take some time before it generates any revenue. So there's not going to be any revenue to balance this off in all probability. She's going to need some cash to cover this, plus that $213,800 of startup costs. Okay. Let's take a quick look at Q&A. Yeah, we'll share a copy of the presentation. Absolutely. So about sales and projections. There's a question in the Q&A that I'll come back to in just a second about sales and projections. It takes time to get that first sale. So remember what I just said about Anne in January. She's probably not going to sell any plants or trees. She's just going to be starting up, letting people know that she's there, going out and talking to potential customers or calling them on the phone, or putting up her information on her website, whatever it is, Facebook ads, whatever it is that she's trying to do. But it does take time for almost any business to get that first sale. And some businesses have a quick startup. Some of them take months, literally, to get off the ground, to get started. Because it takes a long time to build things, or it takes a long time to get the word out, or there's a long selling cycle, as it's called. If you're selling insurance to commercial insurance, for example, it takes a while to build customer relationships, respond to requests for quotation, dealing with the client to make sure that the quote is right, signing a contract, all of those things. So things do take time before they get going. Be realistic. How do you find out how realistic? Well, ask people who work in the same sort of business. How long did it take you to get started? And then you build a month-by-month sales projection, and we're going to do that. And you'll try and estimate what your curve is going to be as it begins to go up. And you also have to remember this is a plant nursery is a seasonal business, so you may have to make some seasonal adjustments. If you're selling certain kinds of products, you make an adjustment for the period before Christmas is a busy season, and the period right afterwards is a dead season. And you have to put that into your sales projection. And the sales projection needs to cover the various categories of sale that you're going to have. So she's going to sell direct to local retailers. She's going to have some sales representatives to sell to more distant retailers. And she's going to do internet-based sales to end customers. She's not going to have a florist shop on Main Street that people walk into or pick up the phone and call, but there'll be an internet-based sales to end customers, perhaps through a catalog or something like that. And I know my wife is a gardener, and she gets 3 or 4 plant catalogs every late winter. In fact, they've just started to arrive. As people get ready for the spring season, be thinking about it, and she'll place an order. it comes by UPS. Plants come by UPS. So selling to through the internet for Ann's business, perfectly reasonable. Yours may or may not be true, but there are these different categories of sales, and it's important to recognize that they ramp up at different times and they have different levels of profitability. Let's see. Let's go back to a couple of these questions. How would you forecast startup costs if you plan to start small and build out? So sure, that's a good question. What you do, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to this. What you do is in your initial cost, you put the cost that you know you're going to have, and then that, that block on the spreadsheet is going to stay there in January, February, March, April. It just won't have any numbers in it in the later months, but leave it there. And if it's July or December or July of the next year, when you're putting more money in, add that in, and you'll see that it will affect the cash flow at the very end of this. We'll take a look at how that might work. But it's just a matter of putting it back in a second time. Is there a best practice to figure out how much budget for employee benefits? Well, the spreadsheet will give you the numbers that are sort of required by law, Social Security and unemployment insurance and so forth. Rule of thumb for a startup business is 15% of salaries. So if you're paying $10,000 worth of salaries, you're going to have about $1,500 a month worth of expenses. And you could just, not bother to figure out the individual numbers, but they pretty much flow easily out of this spreadsheet. The important thing to do is if you're doing anything special that's not typically done, if you're planning lunch for everybody or something of that sort, you should try to include that cost. But it's 15% is a good, reasonable estimate. 20% would be a careful estimate. Okay, so the question is, we've just looked at Ann's categories. We'll go back and have another look. Direct to local retailers, through reps to distant retailers, and through internet sales. What are you selling? You're selling a product, you're selling services, a combination of the two. What's your unit of sales? Is it an hour of your work? Or if you're doing consulting work, is it a day or a week? What's the cost that you have per unit of sales? And what's your price going to be? And of course, what you certainly hope is that you'll be able to set a price that's higher than the costs. Otherwise, there's not much point to this. So we're going to take a look at how to do that for at least this kind of business. But whatever it is, think about what you're selling and how it's normally sold. And go out and look at how others are doing it. And from that, you get a sense of what the pricing might be. And things packaged in, you buy eggs, you don't buy one egg at a time, you buy a dozen eggs, or things packaged up in some typical configuration for your particular line of business. Okay, here's the sales forecast, and we're going to start with January. And she's got plant mix, and she's expecting for the total year, for the whole year, to sell 125 bags, and they're not inexpensive. They're $200 a piece, and there's a cost to them as well, and that cost it comes up to $137,500, and so the gross margin before her variable or fixed expenses is $112,500. That's not profit. Okay, that's what's left over after the cost of goods that she's selling. And if you're selling a product, cost of goods sold is sort of the first stage of figuring out your costs. If you're not selling a product, if you're selling a service, it's a different situation. Your labor costs are really the primary cost that you're going to have by far. In January, she's not going to sell 125 bags. She's not even going to sell 1/10 of that. She figures I might sell 6. And so $11,000 cost of goods sold is $6,050. My gross margin on that is $4,950. Again, it's not profit. The operating expenses still have to come off of that. And you do that really for each product and each category of products for all 12 months. And that's what we'll show you in just a moment. So where do you get this information? How about the unit cost and price? Well, you get it from suppliers. You can talk to competitors. You think to yourself, how do I talk to a competitor? Well, if it's a retail store, a retail establishment, or something of that sort, walk in and have a chat with the manager or the owner. And you can don't try to. This isn't industrial espionage. Just say, I'm interested in this business, thinking about starting. I wonder if you can just tell me, how long did it take you to get going? When was, in terms of your first sales? And I know that here are some of the suppliers or any of these people to stay away from. You can really have a conversation with people, and particularly if you're starting up in, let's say, Springfield, and you know that your customers are going to come from within 25 miles of Springfield. Go to Worcester or go to Hartford. Well, Hartford's probably close enough, so you may have some crossover. We'll go to Worcester and talk to some people there who are in the same business, because you're not going to be in competition. Say, I'm from Springfield, and I'm thinking about doing this in Springfield. Sales volume in units. How do I know what my sales volume is going to be? Look at news reports. Ideally, you're not entering a business without having worked in the industry. So whether, no matter what it is, whether it's writing software or starting a restaurant, it's the experience that you gain from working in the industry will give you a huge amount of background knowledge about how things go. What happens? What's the delivery like of a product that I'm bringing in? Who are the suppliers? What does labor cost me in this industry? What was I being paid when I was doing this work? All of those things are very helpful. So that should really be the first thing, I suppose, not the second. Observe the competitors. See, go and, as I say, go and talk to them. If they're online competitors, see what they say about themselves and their websites. What does it look like when you try to place an order with them? Join a trade association or an industry association. They accumulate average data for the industry, and they make that data available to people in the association. There will be local chapters of the association where you can go and there'll be a speaker, and you have a chance to talk to the people who are in the same business. Typically they'll have an annual conference, and you can go and talk to suppliers to that business and other kinds of vendors of services, and so forth. A trade association is really useful organization to join. Chamber of Commerce, not quite as useful sometimes, but depending on if you're a retail business in a community that has an active Chamber of Commerce, it's also a good thing to do. Again, it gives you a chance to network and get information from other people in similar or even the same business. Estimate the sales volume you need to make the business profitable. And there's a place you can go to get some help with some of this information, like where do I find the trade association? And who are the competitors in this industry? And who are the suppliers? If you go to the Kirstein section of the Boston Public Library, it's downstairs in the new part of the Boston Public Library, not the building that faces Copley Square, but the building that faces Boylston Street, near the Prudential Center. If you go there, go downstairs, and there are reference librarians there who are immensely helpful, and they'll point you to where information may be. Sometimes they'll do a search for you and give you some references that you can follow up. It's a great source of information. It's free. It's for those who are in the immediate Boston area. It's really easy to get to. It's on the Green Line at the Copley Square station, and the parking around there is not too bad if you're coming from someplace else. So that's a great resource that I think is worth mentioning. But your public libraries in Worcester, Springfield, Providence will have reference librarians. They won't have business specialties necessarily, but you can certainly start with them to look for information about the particular industry. It's way better to go and talk to a reference library than it is to go do a Google search. A question. I'm devising a product for sale. I've never been involved in this arena. Okay, so I'm a little concerned about that, but okay, let's keep going. There aren't many competitors, but a few who have sort of the same product. What's the best way for me to get information for this startup? Well, so I'm not sure what the market is, but certainly there will be an industry or trade association that will cover that market no matter what the product is or the service. So that's a place to go. Go to the public library and go beyond that Google search for that category or that general class of a product or service, and see what turns up. Look for suppliers that produce something that if you have a product, you're getting something from somebody else to make that product, presumably. Again, either a Google search or a reference librarian can help you find out who some of the suppliers are. So I hope that's helpful. If you want a little more detail, hang around until after this is over, and we can sort of have a chat. Chinese suppliers, no USA companies. Oh, that's interesting. So no USA companies available. Let me give it a little bit of thinking about that. I have some familiarity with dealing with Chinese suppliers in the toy industry, but Cindy, let me come back to that. And as I say, stay around at 1 o'clock and we'll take a look at that. Okay, some additional things to remember. Depending on the business that you have, you may not collect the money from the sale right away. So you may have accounts receivable. So if you're dealing with a florist shop, for example, they may buy using a credit card, but most likely you're going to give them credit. You're going to send them the product, and get or deliver the product to them, and give them a bill, and they'll pay that bill, within 30 days, let's say. And hopefully they'll pay it within 30 days. Some of them won't. Some of them will take longer. They're typically buying product before their customers come in. So they're buying in the early springtime for later on, or they're buying before Valentine's Day for sales on Valentine's Day or close to it. They're going to want to get some credit from you in advance, basically, of the product before they actually have the money to pay for it. So if you trust them, and you know how long they've been in business and what their history is, you may have to give them credit. For Ann's business, we have figured that 30% of the revenue will come in, the cash will come in within 30 days, another 30% within 60 days, and about 40% in more than 60 days. And she's going to say, well, nobody's going to stiff me. I'm not going to have any bad debt. Well, okay, we'll just leave that there. But those numbers need to add up to 100%. The same thing goes for what you're paying out. You're going to be buying from suppliers. They will hopefully give you credit, or at least some of them will, and they will certainly once you get started in business. And so you're going to assume that you're paying people in 60 days on average, or somewhere between 30 and 60 days. And that too has to add up to 100%. If you're in a business where people are paying by credit card, you're going to get that money almost instantly. And if you're in a business where you're buying services or products paying with a credit card, that money's going to flow out almost instantly. So depends on what kind of business it is and whether or not you get credit. Very often when you first start, nobody will give you credit. They want to see how you do, whether they can trust you. And you have to factor that in to your estimates of how your cash is going to work. And again, we'll get the cash sort of at the very end of this. Okay. Remember, way back at the beginning, we said we need $213,800. Where are we going to get it? So in this particular case, we're going to say, well, she has, let's say, a line of credit on her home, home equity line, or she can pledge something as get a second mortgage or something of that sort. Really take a risk and put $115,000 into it. And based on that, the fact that she's got skin in the game, quite a lot of skin, got a whole limb in the game, never mind skin, she can go and get a commercial loan and a commercial mortgage on the property, and that brings her in another $83,800. And she can get a car loan for the vehicle. So that's where she comes up with the $213,800 that she needs in order to get off the ground. So that's the combination of startup expenses and the fixed expenses that go into that first month. For an existing business, this is the sort of the bucket of cash and receivables that will be turned into cash minus the payables that will be paid out in the near term, that is in the first months of the plan. So, oops, sorry. That's this section down here for an existing business. But for a startup, it's up here, and this will vary. And so there are other investors, outside investors might be family, they might be friends. One of the classic places that people go for startup of small businesses to family and friends. Okay, interesting question about nonprofits. So forecasting for nonprofits is not that different. You're going to have some startup expenses to get going. You're going to have some revenue coming in that's coming in from grants or from donations. And you do that forecast just like you do a sales forecast. It's really, honestly, it's no different. The two differences between a nonprofit and a for-profit business is typically in a nonprofit, you're doing something that is for the common good. And the second thing is the profits, because you do have to earn a surplus. You can't spend more than you bring in. Belong to the public as opposed to belonging to the shareholders. Other than that, this works just as well for a nonprofit. Just change the category names. Running a nonprofit is really not terribly different, honestly, than running a for-profit business in terms of the cash forecasts and so forth. Regarding HELOC funds, how does one use the funds on behalf of the company? Would it loan it to the company? Okay, so you're going to have to tell me what a HELOC fund is. Just put that in there and I'll try and answer the question, George. Okay. Let's look at this. Oh, home equity line of credit. I'm sorry. Use the funds on behalf we have. Yeah, you can loan it to the company, but the chances are that if you're getting credit from somebody else in addition, they want you to invest it in the company. They want you to have that in there and be at risk for losing it, actually. That's what an investment is. You put money in, you hope to get it and profits back, but there's a risk of losing it. You can sometimes lose what you loan to people as well if they don't pay you back. But typically you're going to be asked to take, a certain percentage of ownership will be represented by that home equity line of credit. Now I know a new phrase, HELOC, thank you. Okay, new acronym. All right, so here's, you remember we looked at January and we said that Ann was going to need $41,000 worth of cash at the beginning of the month, way back at the beginning. And she's going to sell $10,000 worth of plant mix in January and nothing else. She's not going to sell that over the web or to distant nurseries or any of these other products that might be there. That's it. Okay, so she had $41,000 worth of cash. She's now got $51,800 worth of cash, but she had some labor and she paid herself some money and she had taxes and employee insurance. And so she's got $13,000 less. So, $13,000 of expenses. So very clearly, she's got less money at the end of the month that she had at the beginning, because she's got 10,000 in and 13,500 out. And let's just follow that all the way down. And then we're going to come back and look at the rest of the sales forecast. Because she had some advertising and so forth. So she had operating expenses of $4,300 with all of these things. These are, remember, the things, the fixed expenses that just keep going on and on and on. And then she had some other expenses. She had to pay the commercial loan back and the mortgage and the vehicle loan. And so all of her expenses added together, $18,000 in that month in which she collected $10,000. So that's how much cash she has at the end. And the spreadsheet will calculate all of that for you. And then it will go back to the beginning and it will say, okay, beginning of February, this is what I have. Right? And my sales are going to take off pretty slowly. It's going to be April before I get up to $20,000. And when I begin to sell stuff on the web, it's going to be May, and then things will begin to move. So by August, I'm going to have a good month for a plant mix and both on the web, and then I'm going to start selling. My sales rep is going to start getting some business for me in September. But things begin to tail off, if the growing season diminishes. And so this is the curve that I'm going to have. And you can see it's seasonal. It takes time to start up, but even once you get started, it tails off at the end because nobody's out there in New England, at least, planting many things in December. So I'm going to have $250,000 of revenue from that particular category, 57,000 from that one, and 40 from that. And I'm expecting about $347,000 worth of cash coming in for the products that I sell. That's my cash receipts, and in this case, it's my revenue. Now, you remember that we said back at the beginning, she's aiming for a business to generate $700,000 worth of cash. That's not here. What happened? Well, what happened is it takes time to start up. And the second year, she'll get closer to that, we would hope. And in the third year, we'll hope that Ann hits that target. But you have to think that far ahead for certain kinds of businesses because it just takes time to get established. So looking at her expenses per month, she's got these employees that she continues to pay in order to keep them interested and keep them employed. I'm not sure what they're doing in February, March, and April when they don't have a lot going on, but by May, June, and July, they're busy, and she keeps them on. And you don't necessarily have to do that, but this is what we've done in this particular example. And so she's got $162,000 worth of payroll to come out of that 347. And similarly, she's got $51,000 worth of operating expenses to come out month by month. Advertising of $900 a month, office expenses of $250, utilities of $6,000. And so, and her other expenses here. And so you can see that at the end of the year, she's got $226,960 worth of expenses. And she had, back at the beginning, $347,000 worth of revenue coming in. So she's got a pretty good profit. That's a nice profit. And she's entitled to that. But it's really important to look at this bottom line. So this is what happens to cash. Cash gets thinner and thinner through these lean months. And then as she starts to get more sales, it builds up. And it does very well. And then of course, the buildup of cash kind of slows down here. In this month, she adds, between here and here, she's adding about $25,000. Between here and here, she's only adding about $6,000 in cash because sales have slowed down in November and December. She's got some base, but not she's not very much. So it's the important thing to remember here is she started with $41,000 and some change. She needed that to get through the slow period, the startup. And you'll find exactly the same thing. The numbers will be different and the shape of the curve will be different. But it's really important to remember you need money in the bank enough to cover the slow period of starting up. And so that's one of the most important things that you get out of going through all of this and filling out all of this information. And remember, the spreadsheet will do a lot of the work for you. So you don't have to mess around with the formulas. Okay. So sum up, and then I'm going to get to any questions. And I want to get back to the question about dealing with the Chinese suppliers. Why bother with a startup in the first place? So it figures out whether the business is going to enable you to reach your personal goals. So in that first month, Anna's going to take home a certain amount of salary and there's some profit there. She may invest that profit back into more inventory or something of that sort. Or she may take the money out or split it some way. Pay back some of her loans. She can, in order to reduce her ongoing expenses. Whatever decision she's making is, it's kind of a good decision to be able to make when you have a profit. If you have a loss, then you have to make sure you have the cash to carry on and to think about whether you want to carry on. Figure out how much money you need to start up or expand. So there was a question earlier on about, well, I want to start small, but then what happens if I want to grow some more? Well, you want to take that profit and go back to that first spreadsheet about startup expenses and plunk that in there because you're adding on, you're investing additional capital into the business, and that will flow through to the cash flow statement, and you'll see what the effect is going to be on your business. In this case, Ann didn't have any outside investors, but she had a bank. And the bank was relying on the fact that she was making a substantial commitment herself. And that she had some collateral. She had, a mortgage on the land that she was buying, a vehicle loan. A vehicle is the collateral, and so it gives the funder the information they require to feel comfortable that she'll be able to pay the money back. It gives you an understanding of the risks and rewards. So the risk is that you'll run out of money before you start to make a profit. And that's, significant risk. So you have to make sure that you have enough cash to get going. And that's where that next statement, identify development and startup costs and the ongoing expenses. And then it gives you a plan. So if Ann gets to June and she sees that things are going better or not going as well, she can think about what she wants to do as a consequence of that. And if she changes the numbers in the spreadsheet, it will reforecast for her what's going to happen and show her what her cash flow and profitability is like in the future. Okay, let's take a breath. That's a lot. And again, we'll send the spreadsheet out and the presentation, so hopefully you'll be able to follow it along. Modify things for your own line of business, whatever you're doing. This is a relatively complicated business because she's got some real estate that she has to invest in at the beginning. She's got some bank loans that she needs to pay out every month. She has different product categories. They have different sales curves getting started up. So it's deliberately a little bit complicated. You may have a simpler business. That's great. It makes the job easier. Or you may have one that's as complicated or more complicated than this. And hopefully this will help you out. But you can add lines, add category lines. The most important thing of all is to cover all the categories and of both revenue and expenses. And the spreadsheet will help you out. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and
Questions?
we did put the spreadsheet into the chat for people to
Great.
download, the link to the template if you wanted to download it off the website. Also the link to find the recording for today that'll be posted. It usually takes about 24 hours-ish. So you can watch for that on our YouTube channel. I'm happy if anyone wants to do the raised hand icon, if they want to speak and ask their question, we're happy to unmute you so you can ask your question out loud. There is a question in chat that I did catch. Do I record sales tax received as cash receipts and then when paid as cash paid out?
Yes. Yes, it's sales tax pay. It as a category, it'll be a line in. So one thing I didn't cover was accounting software. And a lot of people will use Quicken. It's a product by Intuit. We have some workshops on how to use Quicken. Quicken has some templates for different kinds of businesses, a lot of templates, and they're pretty good. But that's a place where I'd actually go to an accountant and pay an accountant to help you get that going. And once you get that going, as long as you're categorizing your expenses and your receipts properly, it will do a really good job of keeping track for you. But yeah, that's exactly right. There's the one line that comes in and one line that goes out, and the sales tax payments are a deduction from revenue, okay? Because your net revenue is after you've paid those sales taxes.
And you meant
And
to
then-
say QuickBooks, not Quicken.
Sorry,
QuickBooks.
I beg your
Yes,
pardon.
QuickBooks. That's
Yeah,
okay.
Quicken is a whole other thing. I don't have Quicken. I don't happen to like Quicken very much. I use something else myself. QuickBooks is where you want to go. Yep.
Yeah, and he's right. We do have another one coming, another QuickBooks workshop coming up February 8th, I think it is, but you can catch that on our website or on the newsletter if anyone wants to register for that. Yes, and there is a QuickBooks training tonight at the Central Library. You are correct about that as well.
Yeah. All right.
That one might be full though, but we can check on that if you need to. You can reach out to me at outreach@scoreboston.org if you need help with any of that information. And then just a reminder that at the Boston chapter alone, we have a handful of mentors that can work with you on budget. And so, if you spread out to any of the chapters in our district or any of the chapters nationwide, there's a lot of mentors out there that can help you work on